Oh, nothing. I just got the new COVID vaccine. I got a text this morning, said they could stop by the house and give it to me. No lineups or anything. It's just, sometimes there's some side effects and I have to let them know, but I feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good reason not to get a vaccine, I'd say.
Yeah. She's really talented.
Yeah, that physical humor, that takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it does. That was actually sent to us from one of our patrons who sent that to us.
Yeah, thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Guy, for that. That was really funny. Yeah, I think what we've seen is a progression of some of the humor that's come out of the Fourth Industrial Revolution or the age of COVID. At first, you saw a lot of TikTok humor from people who were having sort of lockdown humor or things like that, and now that's transitioned into the next stage of the humor aspect of this whole thing, which is the vaccine. So who knows what will come next after that.
Well, I still really like the Darren Denton stuff.
Oh, yeah.
He takes the
Darren Dutton.
Darren
Dutton is really funny.
Find him on Twitter. He takes Boris Johnson videos and cuts them up. And
we've shown his stuff before on our series here, on our Bookmark series. We would love to be able to do something like that, but it is so time consuming. I mean, he's even tweeted, he's been like, you guys want me to keep doing these things, but you have no idea how hard it is to do that.
I imagine that they take a long time, just, editing our things. Bookmark itself takes, okay, folks, I just want you to know that every Bookmark program takes at least 3 hours to produce.
Yeah, at least.
So, an hour to talk and 2 hours to edit. So
to edit, and sometimes, it goes on into the next day, depending on how late we get started. So, everything we do takes a lot of time. And speaking of time, we are now, so today is officially November 16. And so we are now officially at the 8-month mark. So everybody went in, the Donald Trump made an announcement on March 13th, Friday the 13th, that he was instituting a national emergency. And FEMA took over. So, and that it was going to take just a couple of weeks to flatten the curve. And, we all knew when this happened that this was, that this wasn't going away anytime soon. Yeah. I think we can all agree to that. I think that over the last 8 months or so, what's been happening is all of this information is being shared by these various content creators, including us, that is really, really profound and really difficult for people to respond to in ways that are healthy. And I think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel I'm kind of putting the content creators on notice right now. I think JP and I have done a really good job at keeping it kind of light. After each and every one of our video essays, at the very end of it, we end it on a high note. We end it with a good song and good video footage that we found out there on the internet, thanks to everybody who shares everything that they share all over their social media pages. And we try to end every video essay that we do with something positive and something warm and hopeful and something that will ground people, because the trauma that is coming out as a result of the masking and the lockdown and the disruption of the economies and the disruption of human rights is triggering people who have past trauma in their lives. There are people that have reached out to us personally who wish to remain anonymous, who are dealing with some serious past abuse issues, and this entire experience through the age of COVID has triggered all of those traumatic events and have bubbled back up to the surface. And I think that a lot of content creators are putting out really good information, but because they're so popular and because they're so well funded and because they want to speak to their audience who does fund them, and they want to speak to their audience who has these expectations from them, that they're forgetting that there's other people that are watching their content who are suffering kind of as a result of the information being shared. Like, it's really triggering to people who have gone through years and years of trauma, whether it's something that was done to them by another person, or whether they had like a automobile accident and their frontal lobe was affected. Everything that is happening in the age of COVID is a trigger for those people. So there's a whole population of people that are really suffering right now as a result of not only what's happening in real time, but also suffering as a result because of what's being shared. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to stop sharing what we share, but we're definitely going to put it in terms that is not so scary and not so frightening.
I think what we try to do is put context into that.
Context. You're not going to have jackbooted thugs walking down your street, breaking your door down to force a vaccine in you. It's not going to be like that.
We don't talk about that.
It's going to be much more subtle. It's going to be a very corporate way of doing things. It's just going to be a group of people who you don't know, that you never see, filling out the forms and checking the boxes.
Right.
And that's why we say that this is nothing more than a marketing campaign. We try to bring it back down to reality. This is a reality that you can handle. And I think that, you also have to remember that what's happening as far as the having your peers and your equals suddenly telling you that you have to, put on a mask or stand a certain distance from other people when you're standing online getting your groceries or whatever you're doing, or whatever situation you find yourself in where you're being instructed to do something, or you're being instructed to put on a mask. And eventually you might be instructed to, hey, look, if you want access to the library, to the concert, or to the grocery store, or to the whatever, you're going to have to get a vaccine. Eventually it may come to that point. A lot of people's response are, well, I have a medical exemption, or this is a violation of my constitutional rights. I think I want to bring it back down home a little. I think I want to bring it back to this very real conversation, which is that no human being has the right to insist on a medical intervention on your behalf, because that is what your grocery store clerk who bags your groceries is telling you, that they are pretending to be a doctor and that you have to wear a mask. That's a medical intervention, and that's a violation of your human rights. That goes beyond whether you have a disability exemption, or that goes beyond your constitutional protections. If you were in a country and you opened up the newspaper one day and you read about another country that was told that their librarians and their grocery store clerks or their doctors were telling them that they had to wear a mask with no visible proof of any need to wear a mask, and that same country's economy was destroyed, and that same country was being told that they couldn't go to work, or that the children had to sit in front of tablets all day, where they had all of this stimulation from computers, which was making them act out or making them get sick,
or not giving them the resources to physically process that or mentally process that.
What would you say to yourself? You would say, wow, this sounds like a country that has been occupied by terrorists. And you would say, I hope that the correct organizations in place, like Amnesty International or the United Nations, would intervene on behalf of the innocent people who are being terrorized by these terrorists. Unfortunately, Amnesty International and the United Nations are not going to come and save us from our treacherous, tyrannical leaders. We have to save ourselves.
Right. Well, and part of that is because some of these initiatives are through the UN, and Amnesty International is a very compromised organization, just like all the NGOs are now, or all the nonprofits and NGOs are now.
Anybody who tells you that you need to wear a mask is basically insisting on a medical intervention on your behalf, which is a human rights violation. That is what that is. That is a human rights violation. And I think we need to just get beyond this, well, I have a medical exemption, or my constitutional protections, and waving the flag and all that stuff.
This is supra-constitutional, right? I mean, it's above the Constitution.
This goes above the Constitution. This is a violation of your human rights. You know, nobody has the right, not even your own doctor, has the right to insist and force a medical intervention on you, because that's what forcing you to wear a mask and putting a vaccine in you is all about. You don't lock down a healthy society. You don't medically intervene in a tyrannical move that destroys economies and destroys people's lives. You don't do that in a healthy society, or especially in a democracy.
Or a healthy body.
Or a healthy body.
Yeah.
We are having tyranny take over in place of, democracy, and we're responding to tyranny with logic, like, oh, I have a medical exemption, or oh, my constitutional protections. Those don't really hold any water or any weight in the face of tyranny.
Well, and the rest of the population are responding with capitulation.
Right, and then the rest of the population are basically just like, doing what they're told without questioning anything, without questioning the actual science. They believe in the junk science that they're told is science, but it's actually junk science.
Following directions and obeying.
Right.
So, and it's like the other day I was in a conversation with a couple co-workers, and I said, that the governor has no legal right to set these policies in place. There are occasional emergency orders, that affect, everybody, like say a flood or, a tornado went through and so people have to shelter to, take care of those kinds of things. It may be something bigger than that, but it's not. They don't have the right to shut down the state for something like this. They don't have the right to do that at all. It's the legislature that's required to set statutes and laws and regulations.
There is no statute in place.
Right.
There are statutes in place for things like your state's constitutional protections, which is your access to public accommodation. Mm-hmm. So every place that you go, the library, the grocery store, wherever you go in the world, your state's constitution, or in the country, your state's constitution has a statute with a string of numbers, that you can go to. And it's law that says that by law, that public accommodation, whatever it is, grocery store, cafe, is required to treat you equally, so that if you say when you have equal access and equal public accommodation to these things. So, basically what I wanted to do was I wanted to remind people that after 8 months, what we are witnessing is a triggering in certain members of the population. Their trauma that they've had to deal with their entire life for whatever reason is being triggered as a result of these tyrannical moves by our government, which has been occupied by corporations. And it's also been triggered by certain podcasters who are very well loved and do great research and are lauded as the voice of the voices of the age, or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, but I think we need to really remember that there are certain portions of the population that are not receiving it very well. That's why our work always ends with a funny note or a positive note or something.
Well, even we get comments that the music might be too dark,
or too loud or something.
Well, too loud is one thing, but there was one comment on, I think it was Lifelong Learning or one of the other ones, where they couldn't deal with the video because the music, the tone that was set by the music was just like they couldn't deal with. It wasn't the volume; it was just the tone,
the kind of music. So
the kind of music, yeah. But so we get that, but we try to.
That's just a critique of our style. That's like saying, that's just a critique of a style. I'm talking about something a lot deeper. I'm talking about something that is triggering people's trauma, And so in the age of COVID, like here we are, all these terrible things are being done to us, and suicide rates have gone up, drug addiction has gone up, domestic abuse has gone up, and the mainstream media doesn't even talk about that. Of course, we all know that. There are very real situations happening right outside my front door that, are as a result of not an invisible disease that's never been isolated anywhere, but because of the measures that the local government and its occupation of corporate interests has done to people. So, I feel that, and also, and then I'll end, I feel that there are certain podcasters and certain content creators, I'm not going to call them podcasters anymore, they're content creators, because they do bring valuable information to the table, that, are like our friend in Florida. He's on a 7-day ban from YouTube. He's been banned from YouTube for 7 days because he did something that was fantastically important, and YouTube took him down for 7 days. Mm-hmm. He's got like 3,000 subs, so I feel a lot of the content creators out there that, have like, 500,000 subscribers on their YouTube pages, and they all come from, like Alex Jones, or they had money to begin with or whatever. They're kind of sucking the air out of the room, and they're gonna have to start looking out for the us little guys. You guys, if you're that popular and you have that much influence and then that much power, then, I hate to coin the Spider-Man term, but with great power comes great responsibilities. So please look out for the ones that are getting suspended for 7 days, because this is how they can put, food on the table, like with their minimal Patreon accounts, and this is how they live their life. Mm-hmm. So I think it's time for the more popular content creators to check themselves. They're triggering parts of the population that are already traumatized. They're not addressing that at all. They're just going for the low-hanging fruit of Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, Fourth Industrial Revolution, and all this stuff. But they're not going a little bit deeper. A couple of them have, to their credit, but I think that we're seeing it. I mean, we're seeing the triggering in real life. So anyway, I'd like to just put that out there.
I think that, you're right, that people are responding to their audience, and they may not be hearing necessarily from people who are being triggered. We hear from it because, we are a smaller creator.
Right.
Okay, and so we pay attention to all the comments that come in. Mm-hmm. Now, these folks, they may not be able to respond to all the, or pay attention to all the comments coming in, because there are so many. If they have a staff, then I suppose they could do that. But, so I'm not going to fault them entirely, but at the same time, you're right, they do suck the air out of the room. And there are times when you feel like you cannot get through that morass of noise and in the information.
and our work is quality too.
Well, when when it gets put in front of these people, they don't, for instance, we know that our work has been shared with more popular and well-known established content creators, and yet there's no lifting up. We've had at least one interview with somebody who is much has a bigger subscription list than we do and a bigger following, and that was great. It was really nice that we had that, and it gave us a little boost. But primarily, we as content creators, we spend a lot of time marketing our work out to other people, and we ask you, like we often ask everybody, if you could please share our work around. And I know that a lot of you do, and that you do support us, and we thank you for that. Some of you have also become patrons, and we appreciate that as well very much, because without your support, it's hard to keep things rolling. And as I mentioned, like everybody spends a lot of time on their video work, and I'm talking about even like the really popular ones as well. And I'm not going to mention them by name, but I know for a fact they've mentioned this before. The amount of time it takes to research and record and edit, and I get it. Like I said, it can take 3 to 4 hours for one Bookmark program, depending on how much content we put into it. If we just talk and don't have any extras, then it's not a big deal. But if we do like what we're planning to do today, it takes a few hours. So just keep that in mind. But at the same time, we love doing this. We're not complaining, and we're not trying to say this is woe is us. We work so hard. We do work hard, but we enjoy doing it. At the same time, though, it's nice to get the feedback, and it's nice to hear from people who are also doing the same thing we do, but maybe have bigger audiences. And it would be great if we heard from them.
I know, right?
And not to
especially
say,
when it's
well, I mean, I'm not going to go into anything.
Well, I mean, we have been diagnosing this as a marketing campaign from day one, from day zero. We have been diagnosing this as a marketing campaign, and no other content creator or writer has ever called it a marketing campaign.
That we know of, but we pay attention to a lot of stuff, so we,
Until we heard one of those writers being interviewed recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
she was like, I think it's a marketing campaign. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we've heard our ideas.
We have literally heard our words verbatim repeated on some of these more popular channels.
Yeah.
And, so...
Yeah, so we're asking the bigger names to
pay us if you want to scoop our work.
Well, or give us credit.
Give us credit, or fucking pay us. There's copyright claims on things.
Well, yeah, but we don't. Okay, we do Creative Commons, which is
that's true.
Which is asking people, if you want to use our work, to give us credit.
Yeah, that's
and
all.
we ask people to contact us.
Well, they don't actually use our work, but they take our phrasing
and our ideas.
Yeah. So, and they, I don't think they would dare to do that. So.
Yeah.
So, but to end all of this, to end it with this, I think what's most ironic about this entire thing too is I can't tell you how many times, JP has 2,600 connections on his Facebook page. I cannot tell you how many times someone has privately messaged him and said, oh my God, check out this great video. And it's our video. So people are not making the connection.
So we need to do a better
JP
job.
Collins and Julie Collins are book of ours.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll have to work on that, but
somehow
I'm glad that to see that's kind of funny, and
it's funny. It's hilarious,
and I'm glad to see it because it means that people are sharing our work. So it's getting out there, and we're seeing the results.
Yeah, I mean, Communitarianism has 9,000 views.
Right,
that's incredible. Communitarianism is the term that was coined a long time ago. Bill Clinton has repeated it. Barack Obama has repeated it. George Bush has. They are communitarians. And communitarianism is a philosophy that comes out of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is basically fascism. It's the hijacking of your social security for profit. It's privatizing your entire life for profit. So that's I wanted to just put that out there. That's
we're going to show some clips. So why don't we start with that one?
Okay, that's fine.
So we're going to look at a clip from Communitarianism right now.
This dangerous philosophy seeks to overtake your constitutional protection of freedom to assemble or freedom to worship. The philosophy of communitarianism, coming to fruition in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, has no room for religion. Religion, at times, offers historical perspective and gives us parables and examples of the past to follow, so we don't repeat the same mistakes over and over again. But when your right to worship is balanced against a philosophy that supports a one faith, unified agenda, then that has echoes of fascism. Perhaps you will one day be able to assemble in your church again, but your congregation has to come together under this new post-COVID-19 philosophy of communitarianism, where trust is broken, where people are suspicious of each other, and where your faith is now practiced under a philosophy that has overtaken it. When these philosophical methods are waged pervasively and constantly against an individual, and the constant message of "do this for your community or else" is pummeled at you from the ad campaigns that filter your news feed, to commercials on television, to what your child learns in school, then what it does is it suspends your natural ability to reason and make decisions grounded in logic. Your amygdala, the portion of your brain that exists as intuition to protect you from danger, is attacked endlessly through these highly coercive, curated, and destructive trauma-based campaigns. Thus, you essentially become an individual enslaved to an outside philosophy.
Okay, so I like that one a lot. I still do.
Yeah. It's got a great ending, really powerful ending.
That one was our longest one to date. Not to now, but like at that time when we made it, it was our longest video, and I forget if it's about 45 minutes, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And it took a lot of work, and a lot of the writing part was and researching.
Yeah, that took a long time.
It was really hard to put it together because there's not a lot of content out there about that subject, and the content that I did find was written by and I get the guy's name isn't coming to me, but he's like the proponent of.
It's like Italian.
It sounds
right?
Italian. He's Israeli, but he has like an Italian sounding name. But it's so I'd find a lot of work by him, okay, but it was all pro-communitarianist, and there are some other people out there that have been writing about it, and we looked at their work, and we looked at his work, and we did some other searching around, and basically came to our own conclusions, and we also drew in what was actually taking place at that time. So we were seeing BLM protests, and we were seeing, art being dragged down off of pedestals, statues and things like that. There was a lot of talk about racism and white supremacy and all these things being fabricated out there in the world. And what we wanted to do was say, look, our introduction basically talks about how, it's racism always gets used to divide people, but what really is the issue and why they use racism is the class distinction, the class war, the class distinction, the poor being subjugated by the wealthy classes. And there's poor blacks and poor whites in historically who have been kept apart through the dialogue or through the language of racism. And so it's
Etzioni.
Etzioni.
It sounds Italian.
Yeah, it sounds Italian, but it is not. Anyway, so that was a good. Yeah, so I like that one, and I think that that's a really good one to share if you haven't already. So please do.
Yeah.
But I think what started all, our big video that kind of kicked off our work in the age of COVID. And I have to say, the age of COVID really focused our work quite a bit. We were doing different subjects before. We had a video out the summer before this past summer called Expulsion, which was sort of a precursor to all this coming,
Right.
This stuff.
It was definitely like it was a floater. It was a floater idea.
A test balloon.
A test
Floaters
balloon.
are what's in the toilet.
Oh. Well,
Yeah, I know.
Well, you know what? It is. It's crap. Is what it is.
Crap, yeah.
What it was is that Nancy Pelosi's district has a school in it, like a high school. It's called George Washington High School. And out of nowhere, all of a sudden, they wanted to take down these 83-year-old frescoes, which frescoes are just beautiful, rich, vibrant murals. When you think of a mural, sometimes you might think of just graffiti on a wall. No, this is from the WPA era.
Right, and a fresco, the pigment actually gets embedded in the plaster, so it's pigment painted into wet plaster, and so it's part of the wall.
The process is really just much more rich and deep. And they wanted to either whitewash them or just get rid of them, and they're gorgeous frescoes. So the alumni got together and spoke out against the whitewashing and the removing or the covering up of these murals. And they really just twisted themselves into a pretzel trying to come up with different solutions, because the fabricated, manufactured narrative was that these murals were racist, or that they were reminding the Native Americans they were triggering Native Americans about their horrible past and George Washington and all this. The problem with that is that you need to see art, and you need to be able to read books to remind you of where you come from. We are colonizers. I mean, that's what we are. We're murderers.
And see, that's just it. The murals were about that. They were criticizing George Washington
criticizing it, right,
as a colonizer, as a murderer, and he was the Donald Trump of his day. He was a real estate man, and he stole land in order to sell it
Not
to
very bright.
Europeans.
Kind of privileged.
Yeah, and
typical.
there were only like 3 scenes throughout. This mural had 80 scenes or something. It was a lot. It was a very large set of murals throughout the building, and this one scene where he's directing some men who are going out. They represent the settlers and the frontiersmen. He's directing them to go west, and they're basically stepping over the body of a dead Native American, and then only to then sit with them to work out arrangements and deals to steal their land.
Right.
This is where
slavery was depicted,
and so they were claiming that students were being triggered by these
right, and that's
works
not
of
the
art,
case at all.
And it's because a lot of the case, and I'm going to go back to what Julie was saying, is that the arts have been taken away from the curriculum in schools, long before now, right? As well as critical thinking around creative works and media, and understanding what it is you're looking at. And so from the perspective of a kid who only looks at YouTube videos, where it's a pretty black and white world these days. So there's a lot of nuance in these murals, and you actually need to have that kind of interpretation. If you go to a museum, oftentimes you will see little placards that talk about, say, the work of art or a series of works by a particular artist. That's called interpretation. In the industry, that's called interpretation. And you need that to kind of understand what was going on with the artists in their life, in the context of the time they painted it or they created it, it helps you understand where the artist was coming from, and so that still needs to happen. And if you have a living work of art that lives in a school or in a public institution, you still need to have that kind of interpretation, and there was none, and the children were not being taught that. And this is something that was brought out actually in that video. You want to run a little clip of that?
Yeah, I guess we can run a little clip of it.
Washington. Arnatov, a Russian immigrant artist, was a friend to Diego Rivera and was influenced artistically and politically by him. He was part of the contingent of leftist artists who painted murals using the fresco technique throughout San Francisco and California. These muralists worked in the social realist style of the time and produced paintings that depicted historical events through linear narratives, vignettes, and symbols. As an artist and a communist, Arnatov intended to shed light on America's past and Washington's life through the murals that included the depiction of black slaves picking cotton at Mount Vernon and settlers stepping over a dead Native American, only to establish false treaties with the Native American tribes as they pushed west. The murals and the images within them were powerful then as they are today, and that is partly due to the social realist style and technique of fresco employed.
Okay.
So I think it's important to understand that the arts are, they are going away, and it's really detrimental to society when that happens.
Yeah.
Before the age of COVID, we were going more in that direction. So we felt Expulsion was the video that was, leading us, into that realm. We were recognized along with a whole bunch of other people as helping to salvage the murals. The alumni got in touch with us personally and thanked us for making the video. And again, this is a high school that's in Nancy Pelosi's district. So you have to understand that this was the introduction to the regime change operation. This was the apple cart being upset. Okay, so in every regime change and in every color revolution, something small in a part of the world that you don't really think about happens, which opens up a vacuum for bigger stuff, and it gives you a hint about what's to come. This was the targeting of a school, and now look, all the schools are targeted, which we talk about in lifelong learning.
Now, before we go into that, I want to say that I think that this was the first salvo, maybe the second salvo, because I think the first salvo was going after all the Confederate statues. This was the second salvo going after, and it was a sort of a test balloon, like what you said a moment ago, in talking about using the white supremacist and the colonizer language. So the language from the left, the far left, being used by the centrist, the corporate centrists, Democrats, to attack cultural works. At the expense of cultural works, to placate an audience out there to lift themselves up. So I think that this was a test balloon to try to start using those words and the language and the actions to go after cultural works and ideas and creativity in order to abolish history and abolish humanity.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this was the test balloon, this targeting of George Washington High School in San Francisco in Nancy Pelosi's district. This was a microcosm of what we're experiencing now on a big global scale right now. And so when it was happening, we were like, this is, people who've been kind of paying attention to what's been going on.
And a former patron actually brought it to our attention.
An old friend of his brought it up to our attention.
Yeah.
But the point is that I found it really interesting that they targeted a school. I mean, they could have done, there are lots of murals all over San Francisco that are from the WP era that they could have targeted, but they specifically went for the school. So I think that's a good segue into lifelong learning.
Okay, yeah. So this video is we started finding out more and more about where things were going with education, because it was on everybody's mind, because all the schools were closed down, and it was coming up. We were in the summer, and it was coming up, and we were starting to hear more and more information about what was actually going to take place and what was to be expected. And as we dug deeper, we realized that this was a much broader subject than just education. It also had to do with employment and how all of us will actually be treated in the future. And lifelong learning is not only the title, but it's also the concept behind how we're all going to have to keep up with changing technologies in order to keep our own jobs. And in order to do that, we'll have to pay money to learn what is next, and actually then we'll have to reapply for our own jobs based on our education of our actual employment, an actual job that we do. Yeah. And so it's very insidious, and it's a good look at what's coming up in the future in the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, it is.
We'll run that clip now.
Since its very inception, capitalism has relied on the exploitation of people and built itself and its power in the world through slavery. And the only reason the slave trade went away when it did is because the provenance and tracking of chattel could not be tracked or guaranteed through the systems in place at the time accurately or thoroughly enough for the investors and underwriters of human capital to know what they were getting as a return on their investment. And for a time, they had to replace the unpaid labor of slavery with wage slavery, forcing people to adhere to the industrial program of the clock and the machine. In the factories, offices, and classrooms, people exchanged their time and labor for pay, and it went on long enough for people to think that this is the way it had always been and will always be.
So that one, I think, was one of the first videos where I really started working with imagery and combining imagery and
the layering of
textures and color and those kinds of things. And I started doing that with some of our short pieces that you can find on Instagram. And I wanted to start exploring. I have a background in painting. My degree is in conceptual art and in painting, and I wanted to start getting into the idea of visual textures and colors and reimagining what video work can be, and so it was fun working with the smaller pieces on Instagram. So you can go to Book of Hours Art on Instagram and find those shorter pieces. Those were the ones that were inspiring me to then create these new visual experiences within the context of a longer piece. I think that is our longest piece to date.
Yeah, so lifelong learning is, we had one of our patrons who's a really good friend of ours recently say, I shared your videos with another friend of mine, which is great. Thank you for that. And he's like, it's really cool, but I don't quite understand it. And I think the thing about our videos is that the subject matter, if you've not come from the corporate world and you've never run a corporate report and you don't understand things like impact investment, or you're not familiar with the term neoliberalism or corporate fascism or, venture capitalists or all of that sort of corporate marketing propaganda, all that stuff, it might lose you because it's not very exciting. It's not oh my God, the bad guys are taking over the world kind of stuff. It's very boring, actually. It's a very boring thing to try to tell you that a bunch of people that are in suits sitting at conference tables are basically deciding, the fate of humanity. That doesn't sound very exciting. It's much more exciting to go for Klaus Schwab, who looks like a comic book character, or Bill Gates, who looks like a bad actor from a bad TV show, or Kermit the Frog or whatever. It's much easier to go for them, but to try to tell tell you the truth about it, which is that your local nonprofits, your school district, the people that are having board meetings in your municipalities, your own boss at your job, these are the people that are instituting the fascism, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's really difficult to try to give that really boring information some weight and some shape. But I think we do a pretty good job, especially with lifelong learning, where it is so difficult to really grasp the punitive nature. Punitive means punishment, the punishing nature of your life. And especially the children's lives now. I mean, there's the obvious things, which is that they have to wear a mask and socially distance and all this stuff, which is totally antithetical to a healthy childhood. Okay, that's easy. But the more complicated stuff is that, they're on a tablet and they're learning from a tablet, and the tablet is creating badges and dopamine hits within them, which is getting them used to being sort of enslaved to this idea that for the rest of their life they will be always have to get to the next level, that they'll never be good enough to actually accomplish anything, and that's slavery. So
you know what I
trying
think,
to conceptualize that in lifelong learning, I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so too. But getting back to your idea about it's hard to describe what's taking place because it's coming from a corporate place. We did that in two places, and I think the first one that I'd like to illustrate is in Quarantyranny. And let's run that clip and we'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
This is corporate authoritarianism. This is fascism. The fascism of global governance has arrived, but it did not arrive in a grand, bombastic style like the historical fascism of the German Nazi Party. But it will be just as cruel. It will instead arrive in a bland corporate style, with policies spelled out in neutral language. Our future will be a beige, colorless world, a colorblind society that will be just as racist, ageist, ableist, classist, and prejudiced as corporations always are when they're not regulated or shamed into accepting marginalized communities. Instead, we will be shamed for not doing what we're told. And what will be told will be wrapped in corporate feel-good language that claims to support community, the environment, and the economy. But this will be nothing more than the same sort of scrubbing we see in corporate reports and will be translated into actions that look progressive, positive, and trying to make the world a better place. Instead, these will be more shaming campaigns to keep people in their place. More liberties will be stripped, more freedom of movement curtailed, and freedom of speech and assembly will all but disappear. This new corporate governance cannot have us expressing ourselves, defending ourselves, or even being who we are, human beings.
So I think that that's that one section. That's all downtown, and that's from the footage that we took while we were basically the lockdowns were starting to take place and things were happening. The downtown was like a ghost town, but that's where we're talking about the beige language, feel good language from corporations that there's still the racism and all the phobias that go along with these organizations. But they make it seem like, hey, we're green and we're using recycled paper and, those kinds of things. And so we wanted to, talk about that. So that comes up. That was one of our first videos in the age of COVID. It really kind of kicked off the direction that we've been taking. I consider it sort of the unofficial beginning of the new model series.
Yeah, it is unofficially the beginning of the
yeah.
new model series.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was in lockdown. You know, we had no work, we had no nothing to do, so we decided to. And all of this information was coming at us from all different directions, from the various, you know, sources that we listen to and the various sources that we read. So we decided to make something out of it. We decided to give it shape, because as much as there were a lot of people that understood what was happening and that this was the onset of fascism, there were still a giant portion of the population that were utterly confused. I found these people on Reopen PA who were utterly confused, very misguided. They didn't understand what was happening. They were convinced it was just they were convinced that everything was gonna go back to normal within a week. Mm-hmm. Not even just 2 weeks, to quote Flatten the Curve, that maybe there was some kind of mistake. And so I thought, okay, these people are, you know, if they don't get the truth, like right now, they're in for a world of hurt.
Right.
So I shared Quarantyranny with them, and the administrator for Reopen PA was like, whoa, this is huge. This is bigger than what we realized. It has to do with the central banks. It has to do with the cudgeling of small businesses and humanity. And so Quarantyranny was a term that somebody said, I forget who,
I don't know where we got
but
it
I was
from.
like, that's it. That's the name of our video. That's what we're going to call this first video essay, this breakout video essay. It was really exciting to make it. It was really exciting to put it together. We were like electric. Well, we still are. When we make our videos, we get really excited.
Yeah,
we get into this really kind of, I mean, and you know, I find all the music for our videos, video essays, for, you know, for the most part.
You're really good at finding it. I've found some good stuff too, and but generally that's something.
It's my deal.
Yeah, it's your deal, and you're really good at it, especially the last songs. You know, at the end.
At the end, and the supporting music. You know, that supports our script. You know, the stuff that's kind of behind the scenes. You know, but the videos that are the music that I choose for the end of each video, which always ends on a high note, it's this really strange process. You know, it's kind of like, you know,
it's a little bit, you know, of search, and it's a little bit of intuition,
right?
You know, and it's like I'll put in the same search terms that she does, and I'll get a bunch of junk.
Nothing.
And then she'll put in something, and it just like, you know, it's sort of like a what are those called? A slot machine, you know? In England, they're called fruit machine. You know, you pull it, you know, it's like, and it comes up.
I just keep hitting the right ones.
Yeah.
And it's getting to a point now where it's becoming easier and easier. So for this, you know, for Quarantyranny though, the song at the very end of it is actually something that I recorded on my iPhone when we were leaving a music festival in Montreal in 2017.
It's 2017.
Yeah, a lot happened in 2017.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And everybody kept saying, you know, oh my God, it's so heavy, like the information that you're providing. But that very last scene of Quarantyranny, where you've got all these kids in a subway, all of a sudden breaking out in song, and the song is Come Together.
Right, it's a cover that these buskers were playing in the halls as we were, you know, exiting the subway and going up onto the street.
And so when we were closing out Quarantyranny and we were finishing making it, I said, oh my God, this is the perfect song to end it with. And in fact, any more videos that we do from this point forward, we have to end them on a positive note.
Yeah, we do.
Make people laugh, make people cry, make people really feel like the most important thing that you can do in this entire process is to get together. Get together and get it together.
Yeah.
You know, take care of yourself.
Right.
You're being told, as we mentioned in Communitarianism, you're being told that, you know, you have to look out for everybody else, like you have to wear a mask to protect everybody else and they wear a mask to protect you. That is false. You need to take care of yourself. An individual who understands his individual sovereignty and his individual rights is what makes a successful society, you know.
So, you know, I was talking about how there's like, you know, we talk about corporatism and corporate, you know, sort of approach to things. One of the other videos that we brought this out in is called Deconstruction. So it was the last video that we released to the public, and we haven't had as much viewing. But so
although over the last couple of days it's spiked up, and I think it's because of the election.
Yeah, I think so too. We talk about the election, but we also talk about interstate compacts and how you know, fascism is coming into our government through corporate intervention and integration. And so I'd say let's throw a little clip in of that right now. Okay.
If the initiatives being put into place for the rise of global governance and the interstate compacts become the governing body for each region, then this will displace representative democracy, and your voting rights, your human rights, will no longer be protected or even matter. What we will see is a further merging of corporate and governmental power, which is fascism. As we've stated in other segments of our New Model series, if we don't plan to be part of this system, if we don't agree to be enslaved into a digital slave grid and an AI-driven surveillance panopticon, we're going to have to come up with something else. We've also stated that we don't have all the answers. Most of these answers will have to come from you and your neighbors and local communities. What we can suggest is something known as direct democracy. The so-called Founding Fathers were afraid of direct democracy because their revolution was a bourgeois revolution for the wealthy white men who made up that demographic. They were out to protect their own interests and not the interests of poor people, the people that they enslaved to build their businesses and the nation, women, the native peoples of this land, or anyone else who wasn't a white, wealthy, landowning male. They were afraid of direct democracy because it meant they'd have to share power with the rabble. And although the subsequent amendments in the U.S. Constitution allowed for more and more power sharing and the protected rights of individuals increased, that last remaining wall that separated everyday people from sharing power in the political process, representative democracy, has never been removed. With the demise of representational democracy and the rise of fascism in the world, it's time to take back your autonomy and sovereignty. And one of the best ways to achieve that is to embrace direct democracy. Direct democracy is a system that works from the ground up, not the top down, and lends itself nicely to horizontal organization. It provides autonomy for everyone and is the only true form of democracy.
Okay, well, so that I liked that one a lot. That was a shorter video, but it was, and it was, you know, I have to say that one was one of the tougher ones to write.
Yeah, it's hard. Again, it's really hard to put into script and give shape to these really nuanced methods and these nuanced
ideas and concepts,
initiatives too, that are being passed.
Right.
Basically, what you have right now, which we illustrated in Deconstruction, is you have committee members that are unelected that are shaping the way that your local communities are run. And some people would respond to me and say, well, what's wrong with that? Big deal. Well, it's because those committee members represent the desires and the needs of corporations, not individuals who pay their taxes into their local economies and into their local communities.
Well, it's sort of along the same lines as, like, you know, you are no longer a respected customer if you go to a store, right? So
Right.
if you're, there is no such thing as customer service anymore.
No,
it's
that's
basically
gone.
away.
Right.
Because they don't need you, and they don't,
They don't need your money. They don't need you at
Right.
all. Your business. You don't have purchasing power anymore. So just very quickly, back in the old days, back when we had a functioning democracy, we were called citizens. We were engaged citizens that our vote actually maybe at one point did have power. That I'm a little dubious about that and skeptical. But, the thing was that we were engaged. We went to all the right meetings, and our voices meant something, and we could push democracy, or we could push, our own individual rights and our own economic interests. We could push that into our government bodies. Well, what happened when corporations took over our government, we still had a little bit of power. It was our purchasing power. And we were no longer referred to in the news as citizens. If you notice, there was a subtle change in mainstream media about the way we were referred to. We were referred to as consumers.
Right.
So this consumer said this and this consumer said that, no matter what it was about. We were just referred to as consumers. Now we are not even consumers anymore, because even that part, our purchasing power, has even been taken away. Because through the DPA, the Defense Production Act, money was handed out through the CARES Act to all of these businesses that are now emerged with the government. So they don't need our money when the government and the businesses are working together. Right. They don't need our so we don't have our purchasing power anymore.
Right, exactly. And those investments that were made into those businesses came with strings attached. They came with stipulations, and
the strings attached are,
well, it's the mask and the social distancing and the surveillance and all those things, and the keeping you out if you don't wear a mask, and all the crap that we're dealing with now. And so these pay for performance types of contracts, and like what we get into in our upcoming video, CoOptation, we talk about social impact bonds and how they affect how a company or a group of, like an investment has to respond and work. So social impact bonds, they create a situation that a business has to meet certain specific specifications in order to get make something good in the community, and we talk about that. We did talk about that a little bit in lifelong learning, and you can go back and watch that video and see the information about social impact bonds.
Right. This terminology, I really feel that people should normalize this kind of language and terminology in your day-to-day life. Your life is being invested in for someone else's profit. Okay, so everything that you see and everything that you experience is for the benefit of someone else's profit. And it's really hard to give it shape. It's really hard to pin it down and try to explain to people. We've been doing the best we can. We hope we're people are starting to see the light. This isn't communism. This isn't Marxism. This is neoliberalism on steroids. This is corporate fascism. When you have governments working with corporations and merging together, and the people do not benefit from that merging, then you have something called fascism. That's what fascism is. And all of our videos keep that underlying truth, pushing it along. Like that is an underlying message that pushes the narrative in all of our videos.
So many people and so many content creators want to push the
because it's easy.
Marxist narrative, or it's China's fault,
or whatever,
or whatever, and it's Chinese.
Because it's easy.
It's easy, but it's also like something else we keep coming back to, and that is that it's very 20th century thinking.
Right.
And it's what a lot of people still have in mind when they're even in lifelong learning. We talk about this, where it's like, we are going into a place the children are going into a place that we never had to deal with as when we were learning in school, even up to 20 years ago, and so all these ideas and concepts and paradigms are stuck in the 20th century. And what is actually happening, and we see this all over social media, and it's everywhere. It's on the far left, it's on the far right, it's in between. People are still in the 20th century mode
out of the
thinking,
20th century.
And these paradigms. We are in a completely different place now.
Right.
And the paradigms that are being pushed onto us come from all the things that have been in the works for the last 50 years. And we're starting to see the results of them. They were going on in the background, and they've been introducing these things over a period of time slowly. So, they talk about the boiling frog. Well, that is what they mean. These things have been ushered in and rolled out over a period of the last 30 years, if not 40. Well, I said 50 a moment ago, but I think the planning stages were 50 years ago. And these things started getting implemented in the last 30, 35 years.
Right. The way I try to bring it home for people and try to get them to, make it more relatable to their day-to-day life. So this invisible person in China is not the enemy. The enemy is probably like somebody who works, writing code, and he wears a hoodie and he's really cool and you could have a beer with him. That's the enemy. That's the fascist. They don't look like fascists on the outside. They don't. When I say the word fascist, you think that I'm talking about, somebody like Klaus Schwab with his, scary accent and his bald head, and he looks like a comic book character.
Yeah.
Or Bill Gates, who's known for, just horrible vaccines in other countries. These crimes against humanity.
These fascists are also the grocery store manager and the small business owner that will not let you in without a mask.
Right. So they are instituting fascism in your life. Your teacher, if your school teacher is forcing your kid to wear a mask, they're a fascist. They're supporting fascism. Your school board, any administrator, anybody who so these are. This is, relatable language. Like, you should be able to understand that, the people that are writing the code to put these models in place are the ones that are at fault. They're doing the bidding of the bigger picture.
The ruling class.
The ruling class, yeah.
Right?
Or the people that...
Or the managerial class.
The managerial class are, the managerial class, we talk a lot about managerial class, because this is class war. So, they're like the people who are the CEOs of, like, an agency that works with your local transportation company. They're the fascists. Because the agency that works with your local transportation agency, or your local municipal transportation, like your trains and your buses, there's an agency that they've hired to install tracking devices. And those tracking devices, track you, which is fascism. Like, you don't need to be tracked. So all those people, those are the people who are kind of like in and out of your day-to-day lives. Maybe they're your friends, they're the fascists. So that makes it more relatable than, that it's just some, like, unseen Marxist conspiracy.
And we always, and we talked about this before, it's like, people like to think of these things in comic book terms, too.
Right.
And it's like, if you...
Get a grip.
Wake
up.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't look for heroes, but at the same time, you can't look for any one villain, right? There are no supervillains, there are no superheroes. The closest thing to the supervillain is Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates.
Right.
But even, and I'm not saying that they're nice people and that we should like them. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that they are responsible for a lot of these initiatives and a lot of these concepts and ideas that are putting us into these places. But they are not the ones that we can go after. The people that we can go after are the grocery store managers, are these other people in the managerial class that are really actually more responsible for allowing these things to happen than the supervillains at the top.
Right.
You know?
And it's really easy to just walk into a school board meeting where they're making a policy for your children that are going to literally destroy your children's lives. It's much, how hard is it to walk into that school board meeting and say, this isn't what I pay my taxes for. This isn't happening.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to do. And there's no law, there's no statutes in place that say that you can't do that.
Right.
I mean,
No.
you need to be much more aware of the way these systems work.
Now, we're aware that these things are hard, and you will be vilified, and you'll be called every name in the book. And so it's up to us to find ways, and the thing is, it might not be that you have to do this alone. In fact, it's probably better if you find other people in your community who are willing to go in with you to support these things, people who feel the same way you do. And I'm sure they're out there, and you have to find them, and you have to fight these things, not alone, but with others. And I think that's part of building up your community.
Right, and I think that there should be, one cause that if you're a parent and you're really concerned about what's going on in the school and you're concerned about your kid, then maybe make that your cause.
Mm-hmm.
We're not parents, we don't have children, we run a platform that is creatively analyzing and, offering information to people. That's our cause. Mm-hmm. Our cause is our work.
Yeah, getting information out there. Well, and I think the other initiative that we're taking actually is we have put it out there. Come to our house, to the local people in the area,
to the locals,
who are feeling the effects of what's going on and don't agree with it or are questioning it.
Yeah, they're skeptical.
And they're skeptical,
like,
and so we've started putting together evenings where people can come together and just kind of hang out and talk and kind of relax for a little bit. It's we're not calling it a safe space because that's something else altogether.
It's just
it's a place where people can get together, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and that's sometimes all you need is just to be able to hang out and have a snack and talk to people, have a little music going.
Yeah.
Our place is really is really cool for that. So but I really want to drive home that a lot of content creators are going to the low-hanging fruit, easy messaging of communism or Marxism, or that it's some kind of weird Chinese takeover, or that it's the Rothschilds or whatever. Okay, look, it's really like your school board passing dumbass initiatives that are going to hurt your kid. It's really like all of a sudden you might have all sorts of changes in your neighborhood. Somebody that we follow, that we respect a lot, was saying things like, all of a sudden, my local municipality, my local board decided that they wanted to, put up, all these crazy things like apartment buildings and ski lifts and all this crazy stuff, and, chop down trees and turn it into this kind of like resort area. And that's part of all of this. That's part of sustainable development. That's part of these, surveillance goals. All of that was going to be a cover for these more nefarious global initiatives. And so all she did was go to her local board and said, why are you trying to pass all this crazy stuff? That's not what I voted for. And it was easy to kind of at least put it on hold or put a stop to it in her local municipality. Okay, that doesn't have anything to do with the Chinese communist takeover. You can literally change the direction that this thing is going if you get your feet back on the ground, get your head in the game, and understand that it's just a few people from the managerial class that are trying to push a corporate report or a corporate plan onto your city and school and whatever.
Well, we did do a video kind of about that. I guess I wasn't going to do this one, but I think I think we we're going to push the time on this because we want to get some of our videos out there in front of you. We did a cartoon called Resilient Cities.
Oh, right.
Let's watch.
Resilience has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? But what does it mean? It means rethinking and reimagining how to use weather and economic disasters to financialize cities and the people who live there by setting them up for social impact investing and pay for success finance. How awesome that tax money goes to planning, financing, and preparing for resilience. But nothing really helps anyone. Instead, they're using predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, and wearable and screen-based technologies to monitor and track poor people to profit from their misery. What better way to leverage municipal resources, bypass existing laws and bureaucracy to make cities and the residents in them more vulnerable to natural disasters, economic downturns, and climate change? As Colin Ward said in Anarchy in Action, planning, the essential grid of an ordered society, turns out to be yet another way in which the rich and powerful oppress and harass the weak and the poor.
We'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there.
Okay, so
that was so fun.
That was
I
a
love
fun. That one is a fun one. We
6
brought back,
minutes long.
6 minutes
only.
long. It's a real short one. It's easy to share, and it's about the language that's used. Where they say, "Oh, it's a resilient city," but what it's really about is hurting people and investing in natural disaster capitalism and things like that, and hurting communities rather than helping
and
them.
it's a lot of Orwellian doublespeak too,
Right.
in these resilient city or opportunity zones, or livable cities, or whatever it is that they call them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like those are all, they sound good, but they really it's doublespeak.
Mm-hmm.
They're just the opposite of that.
Right.
We live in an opportunity zone, a very poor neighborhood, a very poor part of Pittsburgh, and right across the street from us is an abandoned lot that people throw their trash in. A house used to be on the lot. We wanted to turn it into a community garden. It's been abandoned for years. Nobody's touched it. We figured, how easy could this be? And because of the sort of resilient cities initiatives that are out there, we were kept from doing that through policy. So it's important that you stay poor, that your neighborhoods look poor, in order to justify more corporate reports to keep your nonprofits going and to keep your social movement organizations going, to pad paychecks. Doesn't have anything to do with improving the lives of the people who need it.
What we found, though, is that there are initiatives in resilient cities to bring out urban gardens and things of that nature, right? But they only do it if they can
benefit somehow.
If they can benefit, if money can be made in this third sector organizations that bring about these things within the resilient city context. And so money has to be made to justify doing these things. It's not just like the government is like, okay, yeah, we should have a program to get urban gardens going to help our community. No, this is about money being transferred from one place to another so that investors get their money back and then some. And people are probably going, well, that's what's wrong with that? Well, it is done on the backs of the citizens who would benefit from a community garden. But these things are withheld from the community unless there is money made, and it all comes out of your taxes ultimately, and it doesn't necessarily benefit you. Some of these initiatives go into places that don't benefit you, and the money that goes back into the investors' pockets is far greater than what is actually being put into these gardens in the first place.
Right.
Okay. And so that's the kind of thing that we were running into. It wasn't only bureaucracy. It was bureaucracy holding up the process and getting in the way because they weren't going to benefit financially from any of the things they were going to help us with.
Yes, and that is exactly what happened to us on a very real level. A local social impact organization, nonprofit. The director of this nonprofit came over and looked at this vacant lot and said, I don't see how your idea would really benefit me.
Basically, yeah. Bye. Yeah, she didn't say that in so many words, but yeah.
No, but we understand corporate speak.
Right.
So, it was basically like, I don't see how this benefits me.
Right.
I don't see how this benefits my paycheck
Right.
or my funding, my grant funding.
Yeah.
And we were given the runaround for a long time, and that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand is that in this kind of world that you live in, you are going to be told that all of these things that you have to do, which will ultimately cause you great suffering, are for your benefit in the future. And that eventually down the line, it's going to pay off. And just do this and just do that. You're never going to see that. You're never going to see that. I'm telling you right now, coming from the corporate world, it's a lot of false hope.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. Well, yeah.
All right, so
but along the lines of resilient cities, one
Right.
of our patrons came to us and said, "I've been sharing this like crazy everywhere,
Right.
and I have an idea for another video."
Right.
And so we started working with her on this, and basically we're calling it CoOptation. And it's going to be released soon. And
yeah.
You can still see this video if you become a patron right now, or if you go to our PayPal page, paypal.me/bookofhours, and give $7 or more. You can see that video right now. Or if you become a patron for at least $2 a month, you can see that video right now. And we're gonna
before we release it.
Yeah, and we're gonna give you a little clip of that. Right now.
Yeah.
Co-ops and worker-owned businesses have an important role in our communities and offer an alternative to business as usual. They could also provide a way to create new forms of exchange or alternative economies if the need presents itself. The strength of the co-op is the combination of owning the means of production with others and self-employment. These are the positive aspects that change lives and communities and are the very things that attract social impact investing to co-ops. But like other forms of capital investment, it's important to understand what kind of impact investments can have on a business. In conventional bank loans or business loans, borrowers have to understand what the terms of the loan are. Since these are more conventional, the risks and returns are more easily understood.
However, social impact investing is another animal altogether. Although co-ops and worker-owned businesses are an attractive sector for social impact investing, it's important to remember that impact investors like the story of the investment more than the investment itself. In addition, social impact investment organizations and investors have negative preconceived notions surrounding co-ops that could create a feeling of contempt for the type of business being invested in, which doesn't encourage a positive business relationship.
Okay, so that video is about, it's kind of, it's a little off track from what we've been doing, but it's also part of what we've been doing.
Right.
It's a little esoteric. Mm-hmm. We're talking about co-ops.
Worker-owned cooperatives.
Right, worker-owned cooperatives. Now, there's like 5 different kinds of co-ops out there, and some of them are worker-owned, and some of them are member-owned, and some of them are like sort of a marketing co-op, like Ocean Spray or Organic Valley, helps farmers get their products out to the market, collectively. Okay, we're focusing on worker-owned co-ops in this particular video, and how social impact investing is coming in, and basically, they're vampires. Basically, they're going in
vultures.
And saying, "We're going to vultures," and we use the vulture image in the video itself. But they're coming in and saying, "Yes, we can fund you and give you capital so that you can move to the next level." Okay, but we want you to create a something that's good for the community for this money. And so one of the examples we give is like, you take a co-op bakery, and then they're required to create some sort of program that benefits the unhoused in the community. And it's like, well, okay, now they're not really doing a good job with their previous business, and they're probably not doing a really great job helping the unhoused in their community.
Because that's not their deal.
Because that's not what they do, and they're splitting their energy and time and money to meet both requirements, their original business and now the requirements added to get the money for the funding in the social impact investing, and how this is a very nasty trend that's going on in the world all over with social impact investing in general. But now they're moving into this co-op space, and that's not a good thing for any of us.
So let's define a worker-owned cooperative. A worker-owned cooperative, on a very basic, the very basic definition of it is that the people who work at the store or wherever it is, they own. They're owners. They're worker owners.
Right. So it's a collective effort.
They don't just go to work, punch in, get a paycheck, and leave. They actually own a part of the business,
right?
Which means that they have power. When you're an owner of a business, you have power in how you want to see the business model move forward.
Right.
Okay. So it's important to understand the distinction between just somebody who's like a wage slave that just punches in and out and then gets their paycheck and leaves and doesn't really have any power in the way the business model itself is run. And they just leave it up to the manager. So worker-owned cooperatives are they're very, anarchists really love the idea of worker-owned cooperatives because you basically take the entire level of the management out of it, the hierarchy of management out of it, so that you can actually get paid more.
Right.
You have more power in what happens in the business.
So it's a horizontally organized organization.
So it's very, very good for everybody. It's good for the consumer, the customer. It's good for the people that work there. It's good for the owners. It's a much better way of running a business. And
what we've heard is that they outperform regular businesses almost by 8 times. So.
Which is why it was important that we did this particular video, because they're outperforming and they're more successful than businesses that aren't worker-owned. Here come the vulture capitalists, here come the impact investors, here come the investors that want to that want to take advantage of that status where they're more successful. It's really insidious.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Well, so we want to thank Judith for bringing the idea to us and helping us produce this video. It was really great working with her.
It was really refreshing to be able to work with somebody who understands, personally where we're coming from in our frustration and especially with not getting, we should be, our subscriber count on our YouTube page should be at least 50,000 subscribers, but we didn't come from a place of privilege and a place of, like that other married couple that do that really great work that live out of Austin, Texas, came from Alex Jones.
Right.
So that's where they get their, their base, their subscriber base. We didn't have that,
We've been building it up from
and
zero.
she understands that as somebody who, sort of comes from the same background that we do. She gets it.
Yeah.
So we appreciate those kind of patrons that respect our, our down-to-earth corporate analysis of what's going on, but also loves the artwork that we use to present that analysis.
Right. Yeah.
So we really enjoyed working on CoOptation, and I can't wait to finally release it.
Yeah, so
we need 2 more patrons by the end of November.
Right.
I was holding out releasing it to the public to try to get those, but we just need 2 more to make our goal for the end of November.
So again, if you want to see this video right now, become a patron. Okay, so go to patreon.com/Book of Hours. Or you can go to our PayPal page, paypal.me/Book of Hours, and subscribe, or just give a one-time donation of $7 or more, and you can see this video
right now. Yeah.
So we wanted to close out with something that it was a pivotal video in the new model series. So after our introduction video and after Quarantyranny, we were working on a video and we were trying to come up with a name, and we were going to call it something like, the reboot or the restart, or I forget what we were calling it.
Right.
But as we were working on it and finishing it up, the World Economic Forum came out for the second time during the year. It was probably around June or July, and they announced the Great Reset. Now, they had already talked about the Great Reset back in like January when they had their Davos conference, but they really came out with a big rollout, and it was the Great Reset, and Julie and I were like, that's a good title.
Yeah.
So we took that.
Yeah.
and
so did everybody else.
And so did everybody else. But we were there, we were in production, like when it was announced, and we were already talking about the very subjects and the very topics, the subject and the topics within the context of the Great Reset already in the video. So it was like, hey, it's a no-brainer. Let's name it that.
Right.
And so we're going to close the show with an excerpt from that.
Okay.
Yeah, so any last words, any thoughts that you want to close out with?
Well, so this, first of all, I want to thank Corey Morningstar for using a portion of this video in one of her, I know she tweeted out a bunch of information when we first released the video, so that helped to get our video more views. Mm-hmm. So we have to recognize her for helping us with that. But ultimately what the Great Reset is literally like a reset of your lives, where everything about how you live in the age of COVID or in the Fourth Industrial Revolution is an extraction for profit for someone else. We spent a lot of time going through how your shopping experiences will change. We spent a lot of time talking about surveillance and how your body movements will be surveilled.
AI technology, understanding AI. Who you are through your movements.
Right, and how we're going to get further and further away from actual, physical contact with one another as we integrate more and more into our screens and have these, these false connections, these tech connections as opposed to, not that tech connections are false. I mean, I think.
But it'll only be that, and it's because they can financialize that experience rather than you going to the local pub or bar or restaurant and hanging out with friends. That money only gets exchanged between you and the restaurant, right?
Right.
Whereas what's actually taking place is cutting that out altogether, so that your time, energy, attention, and money go to the people who run the platforms and the systems that we are all being forced into.
This kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This is why I say the people that are writing the code are the real fascists. The people that are instituting the distance learning or the distance pickup. You can't sit. You have to, if you sit at a restaurant, you have to wear a mask. You have to take the mask off once you sit down, and the table next to you has to be empty, and then the table that's 2 tables over from you might have some people in it. So all of that stuff that's being initiated, that's really fascist, and that's where the fascism lies. And so the Great Reset is like techno-fascism. That's what it is. It's techno-fascism, so I think it really does kind of round out where we are.
Yeah.
Before we show the clip, though, we're working on something else right now. So we're going to be releasing CoOptation, which again is the vulture capitalists coming in to take over your worker-owned cooperatives. So hold on to them dearly, and your small businesses. Try to hold on to them as much as you can. And then the video after that we're doing is going to be about music.
Yeah. And because there's been some things coming out now about how our experiences are going to be. I mean, we already talked about it a little bit in a couple bookmarks back, where people were in bubbles,
Yeah.
And so
we kind of made fun of it, but we didn't realize that.
Well, I kind of did.
Well, that we knew from the very beginning, from Quarantyranny, when we did Quarantyranny back in April, we knew that our entire life experiences would be different now. But now that we're seeing it up close and personal, especially through that Ticketmaster article that came out, which I did kind of a blog piece about, and I read that blog piece on a Facebook Live thing. So
All right. Well,
But,
you can
yeah.
find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. We're moving into other platforms as well. Brighteon.
Yeah, we'll announce all
brand new tube. And some of the others.
We're not
setting
there
these
yet.
up,
So
and it does take time. But
as soon as we're there, we'll let you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So here is a clip from The Great Reset, and we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.
At the turn of the 19th century, artisans and craftspeople produced everyday products by hand. Nothing was mass-produced, and entrepreneurs were primarily the producers of the products or the masters of their craft, employing a few laborers in the shop. The products were built under the supervision and approval of the master craftsmen.
The first Industrial Revolution was a radical disruption to that previous means of production by mechanizing the artisans and craftspeople into attendants to a machine under the supervision of the factory owner. The machine in turn created the products while the people maintained the flow of the production line. The second Industrial Revolution was the electrification of the world. People could be even more productive because work time was extended into the night, and factories could work around the clock with workers producing in shifts. People who worked in offices could work longer hours because workspaces could be lit when the sun went down, and more consumer products changed the way household work could be done, which created a market for these products and took away jobs from domestic help in middle-class homes and put the unpaid labor on the shoulders of the woman of the house. Computers led the third Industrial Revolution by speeding up everything from workflow to communications. What promised to be a paperless society turned into one that produced endless printed reports from cheap printers using endless reams of paper. People worked even longer hours, while waste and economic disparity grew despite the promise of a better, more democratic world with more leisure and less waste. The better world did come about, but only for those on the right side of the digital divide. It got better yet for the very wealthy, who became even more wealthy as they were able to siphon more and more wealth to the top via the efficiency and speed of computers brought to the world of finance, production, communication, transportation, education, and life in general. The ruling class had found a way to make more money from just creating more money, digitally, thus truly becoming what they labeled themselves as, wealth creators.
Book of Hours is determined to remain an essential platform that offers a creative interpretation for lockdown skeptics and experts who have been censored by mainstream press. Thanks to your donations, we can carry on doing this essential work as working artists. These big issues of the day are vital and need to be heard. So please share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, make a one-time donation on our PayPal page, but most importantly, please be a part of our team on our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/bookofhours and hit the blue button titled Become a Patron. Thank you.